So, what are the efforts of museums online? Besides the decades-long work of putting collections online, there have been many great examples, I think, and I won't go into all here, but there are several museum conferences that have displayed great papers and examples that can be tracked down, and you can see the development in the last 15, 20 years. And there have been, again, very great efforts, I think, but still it hasn't perhaps settled in the museum sector how we create value online. And for one thing, what is an online exhibition? I'll go back into that very shortly. But in general, my perception is that we have a long way to go again in the sector to truly become museums online. And at worst, and I especially feel that strongly now, and I don't know if you agree, but if we don't transform, we will definitely lose visitors and also funding. So one example of online efforts that has popped up in the museum sector online is online exhibitions. And here is a great example of, I think, how museums are rushing into the digital sphere without actually discussing what value creation means. There are quite a few examples of online exhibitions that aren't highlighting a physical exhibition, but are actually a substitute for physical exhibitions. They're meant to be. Most of these online exhibitions, I think they are in fact long-form editorial content, not unlike what we have seen in the media sector for the past 8 or so years. Text, video, images, a parallax effect or two. But and I know, Diane, you were contacting me to do this presentation because a Medium article that I wrote recently. And before that, I have also written an article about trying to capture the discussion about online exhibitions. And I can send you the link afterwards, because it's really interesting to see that it's not a well-accepted term by everyone in the sector because of the difficulties to transform or to sorry, my English is not very good this late today, but to actually mediate the physical experience online. It's something different that we are producing online. Anyway, so another example of making museums available online is Google Street View, where the online visitor can tour the exhibition from the couch at home. And the image quality is amazing, and however, it is still a replication or a replica of a physical visit that without making the most of the possibilities of digital technology. So, for example, this is how you can visit British Museum and take part of the exhibition at a very high resolution, but you're also taking part of signage that was meant for physical visitors. It's slightly difficult to read, and again, the sign was produced for a different kind of viewing than online. So what kind of presentation could have been done with this exhibition, and what does Google Street View actually bring as value to the visitor? And I think you've all seen this, the shared aquarium. They were one of the first museums to try something new in coronavirus times. They let their penguins loose in the aquarium to roam around. This was documented and posted in social media to the audience's great delight. And I mean, watching penguins walking around in new environments, it's absolutely adorable. But again, what long-term value do we see in this? And what is it that museums should deliver in this time? So please note that I'm deliberately pushing the discussion here and provoking a little. Of course, I love these posts. They're absolutely fantastic. But thinking long-term, what does it bring? Rapidly growing interest in digital from all over the organization. This is also something that caught my eye a month or two ago when people on Twitter, I'm also very active on Twitter, were starting to say that digital departments are getting requests from other parts of the museum. Suddenly people are interested in doing what digital departments have been struggling to get the other parts of the museum to do for years. And I could sense some frustration. We can see an increase in online initiatives, again, due to the corona or COVID-19 pandemic, but I'm very curious as to how this affects museums' transformation of becoming more, so to speak, digital. So I have a few questions that I'd like to bring into the discussion today. How is this kind of rapid change towards digitization or digitalization of the museum? How is that affecting organization? Who is doing what? Is it digital departments doing digital today in the COVID-19 crisis, or suddenly are other parts of the museum, other staff becoming more active, and how is it working? And are there any ongoing internal discussions on value creation? I would say that I'm a bit negative here. I don't think that many museums do have these discussions of what should we bring online as experiences to bring value to the audiences. So that's something I would hope we could also increase in the upcoming months and years to bring into the museum sector as a discussion. And then again, the role of digital staff and digital departments, will they change in the corona virus times? They have been kind of the engine, the catalyst in digital transformation, but will finally digital become a task for everyone, and how will that affect the digital departments and digital staff? And most of all, and I would really love to see a lot of papers in upcoming conferences on what did we learn from these experiences of suddenly forcing ourselves to deliver value online, to deliver content online, and to engage audiences online, of course. So what I did, I've been, again, thinking about these questions for quite some time, and in February, before the COVID-19 actually really broke up, I had started to prepare a series of blog posts. I'm running a non-profit organization for museums in Sweden, and I wanted to bring in some thoughts from outside about delivering value online. I drafted the questions in February, but after posting 3 responses, I suddenly realized that something is happening in the museum sector. So that's why I wrote the Medium post that caused you, Diane, to contact me and to invite me here. So I did 3 interviews with Douglas Hegley from Minneapolis Institute of Art, Paula Breivik, lab leader, State Library of New South Wales in Australia, and Professor Risto Sarvas at Aalto University of Finland. And they were very kind to respond to the same questions, and I think what they are saying is we need to look at this long term, really. So again, the purpose of the blog post was not to deliver a quick fix for museums, like put your penguins in the aquarium, but more sustainability and how this affects organizations. So that's my interest. But I do hope we can have some discussion also about how can we provide value short term also. So the first question, I focused on creating value online. And the responses I got from these 3 colleagues was that overall strategic objectives of the museum need to be in place, of course, that this has to align with the overall objectives of the museum. Then think usability first. You need good interface design, and that what you present has to be a good experience for the user. Continuous innovation, being proactive in the digital space to actually never stop. And this is what digital departments and digital people, we know that you can't ever sit down and just be finished with what you're doing. You need to constantly monitor what's happening and to innovate in delivering value. And audience needs, it's really obvious, of course, but I think as museums could do much more work on this, to know our audiences and know the needs and behaviors, what works for the audience, and do this constantly. And accessibility, we need to create experiences that are open to and available to audiences with a broad area of accessibility challenges. And now I'm talking also, of course, not just quick fix in social media, but what do we produce online on the websites in terms of video, etc., and other types of content. Being aware that online is being global, and that is, of course, tending to various needs of individuals from a broad variety of spoken languages and cultural and socio-economic backgrounds. And I think, again, that's something that will require a lot of resources from museums that aren't there at the moment. We need to either allocate resources or do less of something else. Need to stay on top of trends and audiences again, to look at their needs and behavior, and also, of course, trends in the digital sphere. What technology can we use to reach out and be a museum online? All of these three people really emphasized adopting agile work methods with prototyping, testing, and iterating. And again, that's I still feel that a lot of museums are stuck in silos, and that it is very difficult to break down silos. So again, that's why I started by saying I feel that's kind of the biggest challenge I see ahead. Another question that I was asking about was impact on work practices, and Paula Bray emphasized that we need to work with multidisciplinary teams that can respond quickly, everyone. And what I really like, she said, reminded us that everyone works in digital now. And as a really proactive digital team, you can support staff everywhere to work in digital. Risto Sarvas was discussing, saying that at the end of the day, it's about capability, skills, and ways of working, which means rethinking organization structures and leadership. The current approach, the medication typically subscribed, if you will, to all this seems to be to build a nimble, reflective, and independently working organization. Again, fashionable terms are agility and responsiveness. And Douglas Hegley just added to what the previous two persons had said, that we require flatter, non-siloed organizational structure and cross-functional collaboration. And I really like this, of the likes of which museums have never really seen before. So that's to emphasize that what we are looking for is something that we don't have, need to take a step forward. And taking the first step towards delivering value online. And again, these questions were drafted before Corona, so they're really focusing on long-term and sustainable changes and progress. So it's not the quick fix we're talking about here. So Paula Bray mentioned that thinking of the web as prototyping platform can be very useful, and I think that's something that departments or parts of the museum that are not digital might not even consider to think about, and not just to present, to try out new web pages or whatever, but to engage audiences and to actually activate audiences and using methods of engaging audiences into the it's coming back, English. But anyway, so interacting with audiences online, not just presenting new technology. That's what I was trying to say. So Risto Sarvas, again, the key to the change is to have smart multi-talented, happy people in an organization that values diversity, creativity, and has a clear mission. And Douglas Hegley, adding to this, doing digital well includes being prepared for ongoing iterative work to keep the experience fresh, up to date, and evolving with innovations that take place in the digital realm that is all around us. So my summary of this, what can we do right now, and what am I thinking also for our museum, is to raise awareness of the museum's core mission in relation to online initiatives, because of course now management is pressured from everywhere to deliver a museum online, to show that we are still available and that we are still relevant. And that causes, of course, staff to be very active and come up with ideas, etc. We should do this, we should do that. And then we have to we shouldn't fail in connecting this with the core mission of the museum at the same time. I would also like to raise awareness internally of the public ecosystem of touch points that the museums occupy.
Sandro, do you have any comment on what Kajsa just explained?
Well, yes, and Kajsa's presentation reflects very much what she has written in her blog, obviously. But it also reflects her ideas, which she also expressed in other blog posts earlier on. In August 2018, for example, she was actually predicting, and I quote, that the first step in the museum experience is most likely and definitely will be in the future digital first. She wrote about digital first as the way forward, and that is August 2018. Obviously, it's a company who's made things happen faster and in a certain way, to a certain extent, even easier. But there's also something interesting which is coming out from surveys being carried out. For example, the Network of European Museums Organizations has just published a survey, a first take, with data collated up to 5th April made available, which is indicative in the sense that most museums have actually shifted resources, rightly so, as expected, because of the circumstances and the way things moved on in a very fast way. But there was also a very small percentage of museums, around 5%, who actually employed people to work on media. So the need for media people seems to be, will be probably much more in demand and needed. And this also reflects, for example, what's been coming out from the Muse conference, which has been discussing 3 new museum profiles, museum expertise, job descriptions, professionalities, people who work in the museums, and all 3 of them are also pointing towards the digital. So that is, in a way, indicative. What is also interesting, perhaps, once Kajsa is back online, she might wish to comment and take the discussion further, is that even in her blog way back in August 2018, she does refer to the idea of a hybrid model, which would include a multi-channel and transmedia approach, rather than rely specifically, exclusively, only on digital, even if it's nonetheless a very important element and a necessity at this point in time. So all this, in a way, is very much in evolution, exciting times, as we say, and I'm sure that in the coming weeks and months we might be getting into new areas, breaking new ground here. There's also something else which was highlighted by one of our colleagues on the platform, Diane, and I think that was a comment which was posted this morning, which referred to an article, a blog post by Kate Mears on Museum 2.0. And I did find that comment interesting. And I do quote from that blog something which was mentioned by Mark Dixon, who said, social media needs to be social. And I think that's very telling in what Kajsa has been talking about, and all the discussion happening also on the platform.
Okay, so it seems like Kajsa is not coming back for now. I see that Sylvia, you actually posted a comment. You were talking about the fact that internal discussion are very valuable. Do you want to comment on that and just ask a question more publicly to the group?
Yeah. So if someone had an idea or have an idea of how to proceed to start with this kind of conversation with our colleague, to be more fluent, to break down silos and work in the same direction, that's an important topic, I think. Did you hear me?
Can you hear us, Kajsa?
Yes. Did you miss out part of my presentation?
I believe we missed the last part of the concluding part, but
so sorry. Something happened with my connection.
But I did go into your previous blog post and your blog, your very interesting blog, Digital First, with all the ideas that you had discussed way back, and in a way you were predicting the future in a way as things happen. I wanted to quote also from that blog, and perhaps you can react to this also to trigger off the discussion.
Yes, absolutely.
You do say that, and I'm quoting you, success comes when we there combine awe with conversation and lifelong learning in the entire ecosystem. How do you see digital in all this?
Digital, well, I would like to first of all say that there is no difference between, if you ask a teenager today, there is no difference between online and physical. There is a difference in format, of course. If I ask my son why he's asking me, why can't I see my girlfriend who's living in another town? And I say, but you can connect on Discord, for example. And then, of course, he says that's not the same thing. But connecting, what I'm trying to say is that planning for content online it's just a matter of format, but you need to be aware that people, of course, act differently in different digital channels, and if it's on a Facebook group, or if it's interacting on Instagram or using TikTok or whatever, or actually we want people to come online on the website, we need to be aware of how they behave and their needs at every different stage. So I guess first of all, take a step back from the word digital and just realize that it's the same content, but we need to learn how to package it differently. But above all, I guess there is a difference that, again, you can be much more interactive. You can have a relation, you can have conversation, and you need to produce content more as a continuity. And I'm not sure if you heard me saying this, but I really like the idea of Netflix for museums, because that's how people consume content in many ways today.
Indeed. I'm not sure anyone, I'm sure that someone would like to comment or bring up
maybe
reaction.
Maybe Connie, Jenny, Lana, I see that you're posting things. Feel free
Yes.
to raise your hand or just unmute yourself.
This is Connie. I would love, first of all, I love your presentation, Kajsa, and I think that it has so much value, and I can't wait to share it with my museum colleagues in the United States. And I loved, we missed part of it, but I really liked your list of short-term items. I think the challenge, though, is that we need to be, and this is true for the on-site experiences, we need to be much more intentional in our thinking about who we're trying to reach, and also what we want people to know, feel, think, and do as a result of the experience, both short-term and long-term. And I will say, having worked on that kind of intentional practice, it's not easy. It's really not easy, especially when you're dealing with a multidisciplinary team, but it can be done. And the more time you put into that strategic, intentional thinking about the impact you want to have, the greater chance you will have in being successful. I mean, it's really about, what is a great experience? How are we going to define success for our institution that's related to our mission and our future plan? So I'll just put that out there.
Kajsa, do you want to react to it?
Yeah, thank you, and I really totally agree about that, and that makes me think that we are kind of in a stressful situation where we need to deliver value very quickly, and that's why perhaps we're also trying to turn to quick fixes, but in the end it boils down to we need to figure out what does the audience like, and that requires experimenting and testing and perhaps what museums really need to do now, and as the three people that I interviewed all say, that being agile, small cross-functional teams is the way forward, that can have a mandate to experiment. And I think perhaps that's what I've felt is the big challenge to for people working in digital. Again, I think we are perhaps more inclined to turn to these work methods, but having colleagues feeling safe about exploring things online, like Paula Bray said, using the web as a test field to try out new things. If we can show more successful examples of that, and to get colleagues to feel safe and secure doing this, and then that also requires that they don't do other things. Like, it's okay to spend 1 day a week now to play around and try things, but of course it needs to bring some results. So yeah, I think that's the way forward to learn, because there is no blueprint, we don't know how to deliver the perfect museum online yet, but 10 years from now, hopefully it will look different.
Don't you feel that the fact that there has been this exponential increase in demand for digital by museums, and you also mentioned that colleagues have warmed up in a way to the need and to the fundamental need in a way of having digital. Wouldn't you say that it might be easier now to go in this direction?
Absolutely, and I think we should grasp the opportunity to do that, and for managers to understand the need for reflecting on all the initiatives that are popping up and that are being delivered. How do we keep that way of working after the coronavirus period? Because as museums, this is what we have been wanting for several years, and now we have a chance to take a big step forward. So definitely, I think hopefully it will be easier now. But again, that I was saying at the beginning, I am a bit, I hope that digital departments will find security and find their place, as their role might shift in in the way how they support colleagues and how they will continue to be catalysts in the museum sector, because of course we will continue to need to evaluate continuously.
I see that Maxime has a question.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on something, but what you just said, Katja, is definitely is what I wanted to say. I realized before the coronavirus crisis, I work in digital engagement, and it was a lot of the digital department going looking for people to create content, and sometimes it was a battle to convince them to create something, and if it didn't work for these people, it was enough and they didn't want to start again. And now the work has a little bit changed, and it's more them coming to us, and our job is more to find a way to help them create the content they want to create online, more than us going towards them. So I'm with you about trying, because like you said in your article and in your presentation, everybody is doing digital, and so the work of the digital department can and will change, and how to keep this momentum going in the future is really interesting, and I think it's what we should be focusing on to try to keep this energy going.
Katja, do you have something to
For
add?
those, yes, please. Sorry.
I see, Anna, actually, you posted something really, really valuable. Like, actually, how do you define value of an online initiative by a museum? The value, the impact, how do you actually analyze the value of a content? How do you define it? That's a very good question. Thanks, Anna.
You want some response from me on that?
Yeah, or someone else. Actually, it's a discussion.
Any content or activities online that bring value are actually helping the museum reaching their goal. So, I mean, it's like anything else. If we have long-term engagement with audiences that are learning that, wow, the museum actually exists and the museum is interesting and I want to have a long-term relationship with the museum, that's fantastic. And if you have content or activities online that reaches that goal, I think that's a very good thing. If your goal is to engage kids and you find ways to do that with content online, I mean, competing with exciting YouTube videos and whatever, I think that's an achievement as well. I think that's the most difficult group to reach, of course. So, I mean, anything that helps you achieve your museum's goals, but in a way that is, I mean, delivering value. Again, I'm a huge Netflix and HBO fan. I really like to watch good series online. And that's because it's a rich experience, and I can choose it whenever I want to, and it's not over in an hour. I mean, if it's a series with a couple of seasons, it's something that I can enjoy over time. And why not have that same goal for museums? For me to enjoy museums over time. I don't know exactly how yet, as museums are not equipped to because that's something else I thought about before this webinar, that if we are turning towards a situation where we engage in long-term conversations and delivering the content more like a media company, etc., we need to step up our editorial work, etc., and production. Maybe we should do film production much more, and then our museums changing the way they are, like the definition of museum. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on that as well.
Well, I was actually chatting with different people from Chinese museums like last week, and by checking the numbers of the live streamed visits that Chinese museums made, they actually realized that they could, like one exit of all these crises could be actually for museums to become multimedia producers. And we started to think about like the physical museum itself as a place to retreat, to feel really calm and to find the silence, or just to find a place where you have been already, and the museum online becoming this multimedia producer. I see Elizabeth, you wanted to say something?
No, I just wanted to add maybe the experience how I came to what I'm doing, because all these thoughts that museums are having today, I started the process of thinking about that already 22 years ago, when I created the first website ever with art online in 97, 98, in a time where there was no museums online and no galleries online. To make you a short story, and to go in the direction of what Katja was saying, I didn't want to do a platform where I was going to do just documentaries in the terms that what providing normal TV stations were doing at the very beginning. And I wanted to find a way to do and deliver a completely different experience than a documentary or what you have when you visit a museum. So I didn't want to do a Google Street, so to say, which came later, of course, but I didn't want to do, just coming with a camera during an opening or things like this. So we came up with the idea, everything was compare, and I'm going to just make you an analogy with music, because all the concept of what I do today comes from the music industry. Before the invention of radio, the only way to have a music experience was only at the concert hall. And I still think that museums today are the concert halls, and they will always remain the ultimate experience, and they will always have their faithful people going to this place and have their family, so to say. You always have the same people going into all these, whatever it's the Philharmonie or a museum, it's more or less always the same crowd. But there is something which was invented with in the 80s, which was MTV. MTV was a way to marry filmmakers and musicians to build up a story. So they came up with a different experience than the concert. They came up with a short little film, which was a little story on its own, and they did build up a playlist. So at the very beginning of what I'm doing, it was exactly that. We did only produce films going within a work where nobody talks. It was really to touch only the emotions of people and to address ourselves exactly to people who never go to museums. Today, we're opening up completely to everybody. And then if I come back to the music experience, it's a bit like if you were having today every record label having his own platform. And so every single museum today is having his own platform and is working hard. And there are fantastic things where every museum is trying its best to show what they do and what they want to share to their audience. But what the music industry did not invent is iTunes. iTunes was not invented by the music industry, like Kindle was not invented by the publishing industry. So these are platforms now where every record label, for example, can now be on one single platform. And the consumer, if we call them like this, or people who want just to have different types of music, can then go like this on iTunes or Spotify or whatsoever. So I just wanted to make the difference for me that museums as a building, they will always be, I think, like a Philharmonie. And this is where there's maybe other things that just doing, that things that people have to put themselves together, I think. You have to join forces, I think.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I see that Jenny is double raising her hand 3 times now.
Thank you, Diane, and to Katja as well. I agree with the point Katja made when she opened her presentation about museums working in silos. my own museum has a tendency to work in divisions, but since the closure, or before the closure, we were so used to bringing people into the physical space of the museum. And like with most museums, we were using those social media tools to create some kind of engagement. But now with our museum closed, we're now looking at how do we continue that engagement with our audiences first, and using the collections and aspects of our learning content as the catalyst to create that dialogue. But I think for us, we're not having the one-to-one conversation that we're used to having. It's now all in a virtual space or an online space, and we're not too sure whether it's effective or not. So I think putting audiences first is crucial in this engagement. I don't know if anyone else has anything to add to that.
Yeah, can I add some ideas also?
Go ahead, of course.
Okay, because I hear myself double. I hope it's fine. Okay, so yeah, I wanted to ask. So someone asked, how do we define value? And I wanted to ask actually for whom are we producing value? Because I think as people are in lockdown, a lot of changes are happening at the behavior level and how they do what they do, and also related to audiences. I think that maybe the original audience of a museum now is shifting to a different audience online. I'm curious if it's actually the same people following the online or like the digital content and the people who used to enter the museum and enjoy the experience of being there. So this actually makes me think of are we producing art as like, are we replacing art with content right now? Are we really producing, like, adding value? And then I had some other ideas here written. I don't know where I put it, but yeah, that was basically the thing that I wanted to say.
Sandro, you wanted to jump on that? I see from your last comment.
Yes, I mean, what comes to mind is the webinar we had a few days ago when we had Andrea Jones with us, and he was also discussing about relevance and value in the sense of how we can be of service and available to our publics. So in a way, that thinking might actually inform the needs and the ambitions of the museums in a post-COVID scenario. So being more relevant, and I think it's something which also Grace Ali mentioned in the interview, which is also on the platform, that in China, museum staff are becoming more aware of the needs of their publics. So it might be one of the silver linings in a way of the COVID-19 debacle in a way, that yes, we have an audience, we risk losing it, we risk losing touch, and in a way museums panic, if I can use the word panic, or try to react as fast as possible, not to lose touch. And in a way that makes museums more aware of this public. I don't know if anyone would like to comment on this. Do you see museum programming being much more public-centered, for example? And that could be an interesting question to ask. How can we create value in this sense? And is value pre-COVID and post-COVID the same type of value? And I think these are the questions that museums might be asking in a way. Kajsa, perhaps you would like to add to this as well.
Yeah, well, I'm in any way, what a parallel development is museums actually embracing inclusive methods. So that's something we have been discussing for some decades, but perhaps more than ever, museums need to change to actually let go of control. And so I think that might be a challenge that, and what we also need to think might be different from being kind of a media company, that going back to the core values of the museum and see how we can bring that online. Because I'm working with collections also, how can our collections are lacking voices from many parts of the society, and how can we online engage with audiences, because we are regional museums, and for many museums we don't have our audience just nearby. They are a couple of hours away, and if you're national museums, of course, they are even further away. So finding ways to engage audiences, but also use inclusive methods. So if I take the example collecting, because I'm also working with online collecting, can we create tools that we can hand to audiences or communities online, and collaborate at a distance, and have what I'm saying is that can museums become more of an arena and a tool for communities now in the digital era, and how can we use the digital tools for this? Sorry, I'm not answering your questions, perhaps, Sandro, but because I'm also
still very valid points. There are still very valid points.
So, like, there are so many developments in the museum sector at the same time. Besides digitization or being digital, we have this transformation very quickly now to become digital. At the same time, we have to implement these inclusive methods, and how do we do that in a way that is kind of rooted or based in the traditions of the museum? And because of course we have work methods that we can bring with us into the digital era, but we have to adapt them. Yeah, but I wanted to go back to one of the things that both you, Diane, said, and someone else also, about the role of the physical museums versus the digital museums. Maybe we should actually think about them to be quite different. That the physical museum is something, it's a meeting space, it's a space for physical experiences, and online could be something totally different. And that I'm really excited to see the development in the museum sector in the next upcoming years, to see, because that will of course also affect what kind of competence you recruit and what kind of staff you want to have, and if you actually new departments will be developed in museums. Yeah, some thoughts.
Absolutely. If I may add one thing, and perhaps others would like to comment. I suspect that some of the skill sets that museums will be needing in a year's time are not even being taught at universities. So, and that is the challenge. That is the challenge. We actually need to really move fast and try to understand what the needs are and retrain people. And that's going to be a big challenge, probably.
And just adding to that, in recruiting staff to museums, I think it's really difficult to find people who are good at museum stuff, being museum trained, but at the same time understand digital and how to both collect and to communicate and disseminate online in a way that is really up to date to what we need to do. So as you say, Sandro, that's, you can't, those people aren't really trained at universities at large. Of course, there are, I mean, digital humanities of course exist, but there will be perhaps a shortage of competences in museums.